brain does to do with attention. And one of them is, if you do what you said right in the beginning and you stare out of the window and look at the cloud, your brain goes into something called abstraction, which means that it starts to make connections across, it sort of plays around, and the actual insight becomes really lightning fast because we're not trying to push it into doing very menial, simple tasks. As soon as we look at our phones, we either have the dopamine spike of the message, or we have the very difficult, well, it's not difficult, but the very kind of busy, if you like, tasky, where do we need to be, what do I need to do, how many emails have I got, where's the address, and it's completely different. It stops us from being able to think in deep terms. It's okay if that's what you need to do, but if you're doing that all the time, all you're doing is keeping your brain busy and you're stopping it from going into that much more abstractive, rich, deep process where you not only get insight into things, but you also build capacity, you build capability.
So by using our devices so often, we're rewiring our brains to only think about things superficially.
Yes, and so does the internet. So one of the problems we've got is we've got things called novelty detectors, and it's an easy way to think about it. And if you're constantly being pulled by the new shiny thing on the left or the right, then we get into that process of skipping around. And because our neurons can reset in as little as 6 seconds, then if you're constantly getting your attention pulled somewhere else, then you're not going to concentrate long enough, and you're not going to have the willpower to really start getting into and absorbing a concept that needs attention, and it needs concentration, because attention is a resource. It's a really interesting process of how we start to chunk up knowledge and expertise, and it needs time, and it needs not to be distracted. So the really easy way to think about it is at work, if you have something where you need to think about a more difficult concept, especially that has expertise involved, then if you do have a lot of knowledge, we keep that bundled up in files in our brain. And what the brain does when you have to think about something is it takes them all out, lays them all out on the table, and you've got all this information available. And then you get the ding of a phone, or you get the pop-up of an email. And what your brain then does is, because of the dopamine spike, it packs every one of those files up, and it takes out the information that says, should I look at that or not? So you haven't even looked at it. And even if you decide no, then you have to go back to the beginning, unpack again, so your productivity drops markedly because you keep getting distracted, you keep getting pulled back up to the surface. And you get cognitive overload, and then you go into, well, I'll just go into task and I'll feel busy, and that will make me think that I've done a lot, but you haven't actually done a lot. So if you need people to be productive at work, there's some very practical things you can do.
Such as?
One of the things that a number of companies are now doing is they're saying they're having a discussion with people around what is productivity. So in your role, what do you do that is sort of shallow work, which is just busy kind of admin, and what do you do that's deep work? What are the things you really have to think about? And what's your expertise that I've hired you to do, and that's high quality work? And if we can agree on that, then we might agree that I can talk to you between, or you can answer emails and answer the phone. You're available, you're on air between, say, 8 and 9 in the morning, and 1 and 2 at lunchtime, and then 4 and 6 in the afternoon. And in between that, if you've got a project, if you've got something to apply your expertise to, or you're learning to be an expert in something, then you've got that time to do that real deep dive, and you're not constantly distracted, and you become very much more productive for that organisation. And you're also less frazzled, because if we're always on call, we just get this kind of hypervigilance. Because we get quite addicted to the phone. The phone is totally designed for being picked up and looked at from when you get up to when you go to bed.
Because we've all got to do shallow work and deep work.
Yes.
So there's this contradiction going on in our minds all of the time. So are we just supposed to reset from one to the other?
The best thing to think about is to think about it in the first place. Most people don't differentiate, and so there's a couple of things in the question. One is, yes, we can go from one to another, but we can't go nearly as easily from deep work back up to shallow work. So when you're in deep work, because of the description I gave of, being right down in there with all the options available and all the information unpacked, it's a lot less efficient if you have to keep switching all the time. But when we are constantly hijacked and distracted, I guess, by lots and lots of technology, by lots of data, by all of those things where we have to juggle many different ways of dealing with messages and phones and emails and all sorts of different things, then there's two areas of our brains that start to become affected. One is the frontal lobe, and that's around executive decision making. And what starts to happen is we start to feel like we're really productive and busy when what we're actually doing is just the busy, simple work, because we get tired, we get cognitive fatigue. So we stop differentiating between, well, I might have done 150 emails today, but I haven't actually done really deep, robust work, if that's what if that's what you're hired to do for that day, or if that's what you need to do as part of your job. And the other thing that's interesting that it does is it affects the amygdala, which is around empathy and emotion and connection, and it can actually change how empathic you are with each other. So it makes you less connected in a lot of ways, and it makes you less emotionally empathic.
In fact, I spoke to a British neuroscientist just recently, Susan Greenfield, who told me that this technology addiction is making us less compassionate and poorer human-to-human communicators. Here's a little bit of what she had to say.
Normally you're constrained by body language and by face-to-face communication. On social media, those don't apply. So off you go, talking about yourself, and that makes you very vulnerable, which means you're much more open to being bullied. And because you don't have these other clues and cues, people will, as it were, raise the volume in what they say. They'll have to be more extreme in what they say because they haven't got the other ways to amplify what they're trying to get across. Okay. So this means that they'll be crueler, and because they can't see the impact it has, they don't see someone burst into tears, they don't see someone go red, they don't see someone gulp or get upset looking. Because you don't see those things, you don't realise the impact it's having. Therefore, the whole thing ratchets up.
So, Fiona Kerr, this obsession with the internet is making us superficial, less compassionate and bad communicators.
Yes, and the other part of and Susan's absolutely right, and some of the bases under that is the other thing that's happening is when you look directly at someone, in fact I'm writing a book about it right now, when you look at someone face to face, we're hardwired, we get subsets of neurons that go off, we get oxytocin and dopamine and we start that whole empathic process. When you're not looking at someone, those things don't turn on, which means that there's a huge amount of information and data and feelings that aren't activated. So it's not just that you're not seeing the other people, as Susan's rightfully saying, get upset. You actually care less about it because the area in your brain that turns on that empathic response is subdued.
So turn off your mobile, shut down your email inbox and go and get a life.
You certainly do that regularly. And when you get home, definitely do it, because that 8-year-old that you're ignoring because you're on the phone is not feeling very good about herself permanently. That's another area of research which is coming up.
Fiona Kerr, great to talk to you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Dr. Fiona Kerr, cognitive neuroscientist at the University of Adelaide. So, can you do it? Can you turn your mobile off, shut down your email inbox, turn off the computer and walk away and go and relearn how to be a human being? Otherwise, you'll end up superficial, lacking in compassion, with bad communication skills. I know a few people like that. Now I know what went wrong. 1300 222 774. If you would like to join the conversation, Stephanie Gadden. Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
You're the acting CEO of, is it Dolphin Wood?
Dolphin Works.
Dolphin Works.
Yes.
You've actually taken a stand in relation to this.
Yes, I have. When I joined the company as their acting CEO a couple of years back, I implemented a rule with no mobile phones were allowed in meetings, and our developers, because we're actually a commercial software company, our developers all got given spiral notebooks and a pen, and told that they had to bring their books to the meetings, and if they wanted notes from the meetings, they would have to take their own notes and write down their own action lists, and then come to the meeting with their follow-up the next meeting that happened subsequent to that.
And how did that go down?
In the beginning, there was some resistance, I'll be honest. A few people told me they had forgotten how to write because they're so busy typing away on their keyboards.
Yeah.
But over time, it's actually improved our productivity, I would say. I've always believed that memory retention is better when you write something down versus when you type it and when you're taking notes, personally. And I actually went to a conference a few weeks back where Fiona was speaking. And for me, it was fantastic just to hear that there is science that backs up something I've always thought, and believed about paper and the cognitive abilities. So, it's been going well, and I think our productivity has definitely improved.
You see, for some employers, though, this will sound counterintuitive, that if you haven't got 10 screens up and an eye on each of them, which is difficult to do when you've only got 2 eyes, then you're not working hard enough.
Yeah, I understand completely, and I actually work at a desk where I have 2 screens. I've got a dual screen when I'm working on certain things because I need two different things open sometimes. But when we do our meetings, we actually sit in a separate room where there's no screen, and our meetings are not long. We don't go longer than 15 minutes usually, and I like to call it the quick time, because we sit down, we discuss the matter at hand, we make decisions, we issue action points, to the different members of the team, and then we go back to work. So we never meet for longer than 15 minutes.
And no phones?
No phones. Not at all. Not even me. I've been reprimanded before for walking in with one in my hand, that because you don't think about it, it becomes part of what you do when you walk around. And one of my team members has actually called me out before because I walked into the room with a phone in my hand, and they were like, "Oh, you've got a phone." And I'm like, "Oh, you are so right. I did. Excuse me. I'll just go put this down."
And call me crazy, but it's actually hard to sit in a meeting where you're supposed to be communicating with people and they're all looking at their phones.
Exactly. It's a terrible distraction, which is also something why I have that rule, because if you're bored in a meeting because someone's discussing something that has no relevance to you that you think, it's so easy to pick up that phone and flip through your emails, quickly check if a client has sent you something or if there's something interesting on Facebook or, something like that. And we're a connected company. We have a big social media presence. So I don't make a rule that my staff can't access social media. That's, so as long as the work gets done, I don't really care what else they do on the online world. But just in meetings, no devices of any kind.
Stephanie, great to talk to you. Thank you so much. Stephanie Gadden, the acting CEO of Dolphin Works. A texter says, "Please podcast this discussion. It's fascinating, but I drifted away when the phone pinged. And, oh, look, it's the cutest kitten I ever saw. Oh, my God, it's wearing a sombrero." Thank you, Morty Mick. That's hilarious. 1300 222 774 if you